I'll drive you one, Joyce. Right.
Good evening. We'll call to order the January 2014 meeting of the Parks and Recreation Advisory Committee to order at 7:03. Happy New Year, everybody. We'll start with introductions.
My name is Adam Bakovsky.
Sean Datchler.
Mike Mitchell.
Joyce Gifford.
Bob Burns.
Scott Archer, staff. And this is Denise Kai, staff, running up to the microphone, as you all know.
All right. Well, the first item of business on the agenda is the annual election of officers, and we need to elect a chair and a vice chair. And I think Scott probably already told you at the last meeting that I need to not consider it again. My travel schedule, I keep hoping for it to get better, and it keeps getting worse. So, unfortunately, I just am not sure about how much I'll be able to attend. And so, anyway. I don't know how the group wants to handle it. We are missing Lisa and John. We're not sure about John. Lisa was going to be here and is sick. I don't have any problem with going ahead. I don't know that we would get any better turnout, next month for officers. So, is there any feeling one way or the other? Go for it.
Go for it. I was going to nominate Bob for chair if he was willing to step up this year and do that. Lisa's also always a good candidate, and I know she's got some new responsibilities with her job, and I thought maybe Bob might be willing to do that.
Well, I was thinking that Lisa would be my first choice. I appreciate that, but I really think that she ought to be our first choice, unless she can't do it, or because of her new job and time constraints. I wouldn't feel
Scott?
right to have the election with her not here, and to say she doesn't want to do it or doesn't
Yeah.
have time to do it.
Mm-hmm.
But
Yeah, I don't
that's my
think we
feeling.
want to elect somebody who isn't here to defend themselves.
Unless you just had a conversation with the staff, I don't know about that.
Well, our bylaws are pretty vague on this. We could possibly go till next month, and if you'd be willing to serve through this meeting.
Well, I don't have a problem with that. I guess that's the thing to do, because I think I think it's pretty apparent, and I would agree that Lisa would be the first choice. But I think, given her responsibility, work responsibilities, and I know there's a ton of evening stuff involved with being a principal, I don't want to put her in a jam. So should we hold it off? Should we fill the vice chair position? Or should we just wait and hope that Lisa can be here next week, or we can at least reach out to her before, not next week, next month, at least reach out to her before next meeting to find out what her interest is?
I would agree. I would say let's let her know, that she's been nominated, and let's wait till next month until everyone can be here and present to say if they were willing or have the time to do it.
Okay. That sound agreeable?
I'll check with her.
We'll check with her
and let her know
in the meantime.
that was a discussion, so she can be thinking about that before the next meeting.
And we should probably hold off on vice chair as well, because there might be a domino effect going on there if she's not able or willing to serve.
Yeah, but that at least gives you some opportunity. You've had some discussion about possibilities there, and to think about that a little bit more, and by the next meeting, probably have pretty good ideas.
So
There's nothing that per se precludes you from carrying it over for a meeting. Just means Mike has to do it a little bit longer.
That's fine. When I'm here, I don't mind it. It's just I just feel bad when I can't be here. So, Bob, not to put words in your mouth, but were she not willing, would you be willing to serve as chair or vice chair if she is
I
willing
would.
to serve? Okay.
Yeah, I'd be fine.
All right. Well, we'll see where that goes then. Okay. We'll move on to approval of minutes from our last meeting. Has everybody had a chance to review the minutes?
I move approval.
Any additions or corrections? Bob?
I move approval.
Second.
Okay, moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. So we'll move on to citizen comments on items not on the agenda, and I see several citizens here. So, any of you here to comment or here to listen?
Comment on items on the agenda.
On the agenda? Well, we'll do that too. We're pretty loose about that kind of thing. So you can comment on things on or off the agenda. So no comments at this time from anybody? Okay. Then we'll move on to general business, and the first item is Oregon City High School construction project update.
Denise is going to give you an update on that, on where we're at with the project that they're working on, the projects that they're working on.
So we have multiple projects that we're working on with the high school construction class. We have taken out the Chapin Park Tot playground area. It's just a raw spot right now that's ready for them to, they're going to put a concrete pad in. We're going to put the playground mats on and a tot structure, and then active panels, which are the play panels that the kids can play with. So those guys, I think they just went through the building planning and right-of-way and permitting grading process, and so I think we're just about ready for them to go ahead and start their project. So that project is just about ready to go.
Which park was this again?
Chapin?
Chapin. Thank you.
So right now there's barricades and tape around kind of a hole in the ground. So they're also going to address some of our drainage issues there, which is why it's such a hole in the ground. It seems to have some slope that trapped all the water and washed away all of our playground chips, which is one of the reasons why we're changing that out, because of safety. The End of the Oregon Trail is a grant project that they've taken on to put a permanent stage. I think that ran through PRAC. I think I was not here at that meeting, but they have all the construction documents ready to go. They have the mock-up 3D dimensional plan that they brought in. And we are having to go backwards to go forward a little bit. It requires a minor site plan review. It's also in the floodplain, so it needs a few reviews for the floodplain review. It's also in a geohazard overlay. So all of those just means that we need to respond to some additional questions in the minor site plan review. And once that's done, then they should be ready to go. We're hoping for probably mid to late spring start on that. So they may not finish that project this year. The project leader is a senior. He'd really like to see it done. So we're trying to push that along as quickly as possible. And then we also still have the Clackamas RV Park kiosk. They're looking at finishing the signage portion of that project. And they are proposing an extension from the kiosk towards the river for some arbors and seating. So I think if PRAC is interested in seeing that proposal, we can bring that forward to you at a later date. But that is a project that they're also looking at. And that one we have to go through and make sure we don't need any reviews, since this is in addition to the kiosk and it wasn't presented at the same time. So that part I'm trying to process with them along with the other ones. But good kids to work with, really good kids.
Question, Mike?
Yes.
Several meetings ago, when the students were here with their teacher, we talked about a letter of recognition, and I'm wondering if that has happened or any progress on that front.
We're working on that from the staff end. I guess the question was, thank you for asking that question, Bob, because that reminds me to circle back with you whether that was going to be signed by PRAC or if that was just coming from, like me and Denise or what have you. Of course, we've done those types of things before, but I think it sounded like the idea was maybe to do something from PRAC. Is that what I recall?
That's what I recall.
Okay.
I think so, but we were talking about making sure it got into their portfolios, so each student had a letter to put into their files.
Yeah.
And
So we would be happy to help in however we can, but it sounds like that would be maybe a PRAC recommendation, which is a little different than we've written a lot of those, letters of commendation from staff, and we usually end up doing some of that. So if I guess my question would be, does somebody on PRAC want to initiate that and draft a letter that I can end up putting on letterhead for you to sign, or would you like me to draft a letter for you to review and tweak either way is good.
I'll tell you, if you could forward me maybe one of the letter of recommendations, things that you guys do, and maybe I'll kind of tweak the verbiage, pass it around, and then maybe have something for next month. So I'll kind of kickstart it at least.
We wanted that to go to the school board and also to the Oregon City Commission. It's my recollection. And then
Right.
for each student to have a copy for their own portfolios.
Yeah,
It'd
we
be
can
nice
put
to
that
have
on.
kind of like a generic one from us, like a template. Thank you. That we could include every one of them and send copies on.
Great.
So you
We'll
work on that?
put that on. We'll put that on letterhead eventually as we
Right.
get it done, and you guys can sign it or whatever you want to do. Great.
Okay, I'll kick it around.
I'll send you something, Sean, to
Okay.
work with. You bet.
Thank you, Sean.
Great, thanks. Okay, next item is designated off-leash dog area recommendations. And I have to apologize, I should have gone to the city council before this with that and just have not had the schedule to do it. And now, refresh my memory, we were wanted to get that onto the agenda and not just in public comment.
What you talked about at your last meeting, and it's up to you how you want to go forward with this as a group, is at this point tying it into the annual report to the city commission. So that's something we're going to talk about in a little bit on the agenda anyway, is trying to schedule who's going to do it and when you want to go in front of the commission to do your annual report just about everything that's going on with PrAC. And then the thought was, since we're there now, might as well just tie this other recommendation into that, if that still works for you. So.
Okay. So we'll talk about it in depth a little more when we get down to the annual report.
Whatever you want to
Do
do.
that.
Yeah. You had narrowed it down to some sites, and I think kind of basically getting pretty close to, I think, a recommendation that you were ready to make. So
Does everybody remember that recommendation? And
I do.
yeah.
Yeah.
We had 3 sites,
Right.
I believe, Barclay, Wesley, Lynn, and
Wasn't
Wesley
Belton.
Lynn.
Park Place. is
Park
what
Place.
I have.
Park Place.
I have
Park
those
Place,
three.
right.
That's
Yeah.
what I have. Yeah.
Okay, all right, that's still the recommendation, and we will include it with the annual report, and we'll talk about that a little more when we get to that. Okay, so next on the agenda is the RV Park Master Plan update.
You've got at your places. I didn't put this in your electronic information, but put a hard copy of the most recent version of basically the overall master plan. We are pretty near what we would consider a final product of a vision. Now, this only represents basically this is the kind of the big overview, and then we've got several other drawings. And if you're interested in this, we can certainly share those with you, like details, for example, grading plans and utilities and some things like that that are a little bit more what I would call like construction based. But this is the vision, if you will. Denise, do you want to give a little summary on some of the things we talked about with Kelly? So we met recently with Kelly Grover, our consultant, just to kind of finalize this and try to bring it to conclusion. And so we're circling back with you one final time before we begin to move forward in some type of an approval process. And when I say approval, I'm talking about just approving this as a master plan, as a vision, not getting into construction yet, because we haven't identified that source of funding and so forth.
So a few of the changes that were noted in our meeting is if you'll look to along the street side, the main street, outside of the RV park, there's an additional parking space there where the kiosk is, and then along the grass area into just maybe about the first tree or so is the new proposed area for the high school construction project. So it's not built into this design, but it would definitely fit in there. The other change is on the upper side, away from the river is on this side. On this upper side, there's one RV slot that has been taken out and produced into some additional car parking. The staff had calculated the number of RVs and about how many additional cars come in with the RVs, and then needing to look at if we had enough parking available for the additional cars. So that's what I think most of the changes. The only other change that I noted when we looked at this was that there was a tree missing in the front lots, and that is for not taking away the total frontage view from the people behind. So I believe there was a tree down here and a tree up here, and I think maybe one in the original one that we looked at last. So a few of the trees have kind of been dropped out so that there's more visual points of view for people in the lots behind them. So, and then I think in the front here, we also, because of the staff's point of view as far as how much washout we get, whether or not sustainability of the material that was produced on one of the original concepts was going to be viable. And so they took out some of the stuff that probably wouldn't be viable with the type of water we get there, and put stuff that would more root ground the soils there. So those were the comments that the staff had made and kind of put into play on this concept versus the concept I think that you last saw.
How does this number of spaces compare with what's there now?
We have, I want to say we have 38 spaces now, and I didn't count this one up. There's 24 spaces on this one.
Yeah.
And I have to say, of the 38, we're never full. So 24 nicer spaces
Yeah.
versus a lot of empty spaces. So, and then on your monthly report, you can kind of see where we're at for winter flow for RV park use. But so each time you guys get your monthly report, we also include the RV on the parks page.
So at this point, I mean, we've discussed this several times, and if you have any other concerns or questions, this would be the time to let us know that, because we're, like I say, we're trying to get kind of a final, at least support from PRAC, and you know, you could make a formal recommendation to support it if you want to do something like that, but just at least make sure that you don't have any other concerns about it. We've taken in to consideration all the comments that we've received from you and from others thus far. I think we've, like Denise was talking about, mostly incorporated those, and hopefully it's something we can move forward with. So that's kind of what we're looking for tonight.
Well, I had a couple comments. First is, I'm a huge advocate of this thing. It's the biggest financial gain for the Parks Department that we have, and given what it costs to operate versus what it brings back in, and I'm glad to see it get this sort of improvement. As I keep reading documents that say RV park, and as an RV owner, I keep going back to, I never stay at an RV park. I stay at a campground. And they don't dictate whether they have tents or RVs, but I stay at a campground. If I'm to look into a camping magazine on campgrounds, they're called campgrounds. And I'm wondering if, as this area is improved, we should consider changing that terminology throughout the city. I think we've just kind of adopted the term RV and we just kept using it. And I'm wondering now if, well, we've just used it for so many years, we never thought of calling it anything else. So I'm just kind of throwing that out to the group and staff as well.
But a campground indicates to me that I could bring my tent, and tents are not allowed there.
That's true.
And so it has to be a self-contained vehicle, which would be an RV.
That's true, but nowadays, and I think there was a discussion with Larry Potter before, you know, once this is improved, going out with some advertising in kind of camping lifestyle magazines, and honestly, it's like Camping World. Go to Camping World, it's an RV supply center. You can't buy a tent at Camping World, yet it's still related to that. You can online, but from a marketing standpoint is where I'm looking at it. From when I think of an RV park, I think of really a semi-permanent trailer that's there on a monthly lease, and that's not what this is.
But I think it's also not a campground, because
Yeah.
there's no restrooms, there's no showers. and there's no facilities
Right.
for tents.
We have an ordinance or a policy coming up tonight too at some point about changing the designation of camping in the parks. And
What about the idea of something that kind of puts the two things together? Because I think there's good points. That's a good marketing idea. I see where you're coming from, because that is part of it. Is eventually, as we improve this, we definitely want to market it more than we do, because I think it'll be even more of a destination than it is. Something like RV campground or something like that, to suggest that, because right now we don't have tent camping, and that might imply that, even though maybe in the RV camping industry it's understood that that's what it means.
Right.
But
Right.
just so anyway,
I think
we've
RV
got time
campground-
to figure
would
that
be good.
out. Yeah.
Let's think about that. And then Denise, I had a couple really more turning movement concerns. Maybe I can talk to you after the meeting. Just thinking of places where the grass is going to get tore up because you're going to get a 30-foot trailer that's crossing over those areas. That maybe if we bolster the turning movement areas up a little bit.
Those were all calculated out by the engineer on traffic plan. So
They were
we do
what?
have on the traffic
They were put in or out. I missed the first part.
that we have that. We
Okay.
have that on our construction documents
Okay.
pages. So the turn radiuses, the actual dimensions are all in the construction docs, and we can send that to you to take a look at. But those were done by an engineer who does that type of work. And considered the, she said the largest RV turn radius. So she took one of the standard industry large ones.
Right.
And so the space lengths, and the turn radiuses were all kind of calculated out with that concept.
And to me, they look great, but I've also been pulling trailers for years. But there's also, I watch people, and sometimes it's comedy when they get the new trailer and
The guy
they're trying to
hasn't
back
driven
in,
it
and
but
it's
two times in
right,
the
and it's a
last-
10-point
right.
turn, and it takes 15 minutes.
And once it's in, is there room for the slide out?
Right, exactly. And so in some cases, the grass is the sacrificial lamb regardless of their expertise. That would be a concern. So I'll show you kind of my thoughts afterwards.
I think because turn radiuses aren't my expertise, we may include those comments back to the engineer.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, if you want to give that to us. And like Denise said, we can also send you those. We didn't bring those tonight because we didn't want to bore you all with that level of stuff unless you were interested in it. But we can certainly send that to you if you want to take a look at it.
Great.
I have a concern. I guess I didn't realize until tonight that the number of spaces was dropping that much. And I know on an annual basis the usage rate is not that high, and it's rarely full at 38, but I'm wondering how many summer weekends it's over 24. And are we going to end up hurting our income because it's going to fill up at 24 all summer?
A couple thoughts on that. First of all, part of the reduction of the spaces goes to exactly what we were just talking about with things like turn radiuses and improving the traffic flow. Obviously, the landscaping is improved, so we needed more space to do that. So thus, we've lost some of the spaces. I think Denise said it a little bit ago. We've tried to take a look at kind of the quality versus just quantity. The other thing about specifically just income. Now we don't that often fill up all of our current spaces. It's pretty rare. So there might be some times where we would have capacity where we'd have to turn people away, but it really isn't that often. But as far as the income specific part of your question, another component of this is that if you improve the quality, you can certainly charge more, and we're looking at those types of things. So I think the income loss will not be an issue because of that. But
I
yeah, I mean,
have a feeling our winter rates, winter occupancy rates are going to increase because of the freeway. If there's some advertising in magazines, there's so many people moving from state to state that would be more apt to use it that I don't think see it now. I wonder if the net's going to be a gain in the end.
I think the net will be a gain. If you go into our RV park area now, albeit it's been dry, it's still kind of a bit of a mucky kind of containment area because those RV parking spaces are the used spaces, and so those are the low spots. And where they exit out their doors tend to be the low spots. With this plan with the landscape and the paving and everything being drain graded so that everything drains appropriately, we're not going to have the same visual concept that we have now. And even when this is nice, it's going to stay nice. So we won't have a lot of our issues, which will bring more people in, especially the nicer RVers. People are coming through. You pull in, you're like, ugh, that, yeah. And, you know, so we get people who do comment that, you know, we would have stayed a few more days, but it's kind of, yeah. And they don't really say anything. It's just kind of, yeah. We're working on it. We let them know what our plan is, that we're working on it. But I think the net gain is that we will get more people. Our advertisement will be appealing and will draw people in. So I think, you know, we'll have a little steadier flow.
Yeah, and Mike, I think, like on this side, on the side facing, what is it, Dunes Drive, some of those spots are really just parking spots. I mean,
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I'm not saying it's at all attractive now, because it's not. I guess I'm just concerned about going from 38 to 24, and I can see the reasons why. So, just a thought.
No, those are all good questions. So.
Are there Mike, are there other questions we need to address before we give our approval?
Are there any other questions from the group? Shall we entertain a motion then to, in big picture concept, approve this concept?
Sure, I'll make a motion that the PrAC supports the current RV campground improvement concepts that have been presented to us.
Second.
Okay, moved and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, thank you. There we have it. Willamette Falls Legacy Project Update.
Got some info for you. Again, you've a couple of meetings ago or so, you asked for just to have this as a standing item to give you general updates if there are changes or anything different. So I've got an update from our community development staff, which again is our staff group that are heading up this project for the city, and I'll give you that info. Before I do that, I want to let you know, unless you are opposed, otherwise we plan, the community development staff, you recall several meetings ago, we got a big presentation with PowerPoint and everything from our staff to kind of give you the whole rundown of what's going on. This is the time where they now want to come back and follow up as a kind of a final presentation to groups that are targeted groups like PrAC. And so at the February meeting, they would like to give you that presentation and kind of circle back with you, unless you're opposed to that, which I would assume not. So this will be a brief update tonight, but you'll get a full presentation again next month. So that should be good. The update, I've got 3 items for you. The first is that there is a potential buyer of the property. On January 10th, the bankruptcy judge approved the contract between the trustee and a company called Langley Investments Property. They're a company out of Portland. They think they've done some development in the Pearl District and other places in Portland. They've done some, I understand that they've done some converting industrial property into, new developments and that type of thing, and on, on the waterfronts and things like that. So kind of a nice tie-in there. Under the conditions of the agreement, Langley, which is the company that's made the bid, would have 24 months to acquire the property. If closing occurs within 12 months, the purchase price is $4.9 million. If the closing happens after the 12-month period, so in the second half of the 24 months, the purchase price is $5.75 million. Langley is to deposit $720,000 in 2 annual installments. As of February 1, 2014, the trustee may draw up to $30,000 per month from that deposit to cover their carrying costs for the property. And Langley, as of tonight, has not signed the contract or deposited the funds, so the contract is not final. These are the proposed terms, I guess you would say. So it's a possibility that there might be a contract in place in the near future. So we'll see how that goes. The second update is that in regards to the process for the whole master planning of the site, the first Planning Commission hearing to consider the proposed Willamette Falls Legacy Project Framework Master Plan and Zone Change Land Use Application is April 21st of this year. So that's the first Planning Commission meeting where the land use process will begin. And again, you'll get a report from staff, probably get a little bit more into some of those types of details at your next meeting. And the third thing I have for you is at your place, you should have a piece of paper that looks like this. It says First Thursday with Willamette Falls Legacy Project. That is an announcement and an invitation specifically to you to attend you are invited, but it's also a general public invited event to a celebration, basically kind of wrapping up the public input process. And there's still more land use stuff to deal with, but the major process stuff, it's on Thursday, February 6th from 5:30 to 8. It is at the Keene Shoe Company in Northwest Portland in the Pearl District. There's information on that. This is kind of a front-back thing with a sort of a postcard type of thing on the back. You may get an announcement from the city via email. I think if you have you already gotten that? Okay, so you did get that. So we're passing that along. And that's what I've got for you tonight on that update, unless you have any questions for me.
I have a question. Why is the meeting held in Portland? Is there a reason?
Yeah, I'm probably not the best person to answer that question. Most of the meetings have been held in Oregon City. It is a regional project. I mean, it's a project of regional interest, and I think the idea was just to have a celebration in an area outside of Oregon City so that other folks that might be regionally interested in the project could come and to hear what's going on, potentially to give input. But also I think it's kind of a get the word out tool to the region to say, hey, this is what we're looking at, and you know, if we can do this, we'd be doing something really, really spectacular in Oregon City. So I think just some reasons like that.
Okay.
Yeah, good question. So I guess that's that.
Anything else on that? Okay, thanks, Scott. PRAC vacancies process update.
Okay. So we've got two vacancies currently. First of all, I want to announce that Bob Burns was reappointed to a second term officially. You'd made that recommendation.
It was a close contest.
It was very close. It's a tight race. So Bob is officially in his second term, and you've still got, with Bob's appointment, that leaves you two more vacancies. We've been doing a lot of advertising. Our city recorder's office does a lot of that, and right now we've received 3 applications. We just determined in the last couple of days that one of those applications didn't qualify because of some residency issues. We can only have it's somebody that lived in the urban growth boundary but outside the city limits, and as I think you know, our bylaws allow two non-residents within the urban growth area of Oregon City, and we've got 2 right now on the committee. So that one's probably going to not. We're letting that person know that we don't think that there's a position open right now for them. So we still have 2 applicants, and there was some additional announcements were made about the position openings, and that the date was extended of those announcements. The deadline was extended until I think February 4th. So originally we were going to do some interviews tonight, but in some discussions with Mayor Neely, he decided he would rather wait until we've closed that process in case anybody else applies. And then at the February meeting, we'll do the thing where we meet prior to regular meeting time and do some interviews. So be prepared for that. And I'd like to acknowledge Jerry Wagner here is one of our applicants. We are looking for a specific Pioneer Center representative. We haven't had somebody for a while since Lynn Betteridge left the committee, and Jerry is applying as a Pioneer Center representative. So he just came to observe tonight. And yeah,
Don't change your mind.
I should have warned you beforehand, I guess. I don't think you've done anything to dissuade him so far. Let's see. So I guess that's that. We could end up with more applicants possibly, and we'll see. So just plan that we'll be doing interviews next month.
All right, good. Park Day event. And I saw in the minutes, and we had talked about before, about tying it in with one of the August Movie in the Park dates. Is that still our plan of attack? To try
Yes.
to. Okay. All right.
That's good.
We're not going to change that now.
Okay. Then Denise, the trail news deadline, that's spring, right?
Yes.
And so that would not cover this time frame? August?
No, it would be the one that would come out for the summer, and that one's, the
3
spring
months.
one is short, it ends in May. The next one comes out at the end of May, so that would be the one that we would want to hit for summer.
Okay. What would rough idea what the deadline would be for that?
In your email today was the notice for the trail news, and the schedule is listed in that email. And although I don't have that memorized, it's a resource that is available in your own email box today.
I think I just got chastised.
No, not at all.
Have any of us been home from work yet?
But you just have to forgive me. I did send it twice today because obviously
She sent it
I'm having
twice.
You did, yeah, doubled up.
I saw
having
it.
a little bit of a brain issue this morning. So the correct date is on the second email for the
Do we
deadline.
have the movies already?
In your
Chosen.
monthly packet is, I think those are, yeah, those are just bands that are in the monthly update. We're doing something a little bit different this year with the movie selection. We're going to do an online poll or some kind of query to the public about what movies they'd like to see, and there'll be a voting process. And then those movies will then be the ones that we will play versus our staff picking them and feeling the pressure of picking.
How far out are you going to do the survey? In
I
other words,
think
do we need to
she's-
pick a date blindly then and not?
She
Well,
has,
there are-
she
there are
has
dates
dates
here.
picked.
Well, what I mean picking a date, the conversation before was pick the date that had the best movie, but if the movie's not being selected,
They're going to
till
select the
late.
movies here pretty soon.
Okay, so it'll be
Yeah.
we'll know, and
'Cause
you'll
we'll
be
have
able to
to
kind
post
of
them.
figure the
Yeah.
most popular.
We'll have to do the media push for them after. Yeah.
Okay.
So you want to correspond with Toy Story, not
Have
with.
we decided what dinner?
These are Wesley Lynn.
Leslie, then?
Which is a great movie, but it's not hard to
So you will have, based on what the question that you just asked, Sean, as soon as we know, we'll bring that back to you at a meeting. You should have plenty of time to look at that and pick one of those dates, and then the key will be to know that to get it into our summer trail news edition, which is also the same time we'll be announcing our summer concerts and that. So it'll tie in nicely, but you'll have lead time if that's your concern for
Yeah,
sure.
I mean, to me,
No doubt.
that would be just the determining factor, rather than us just looking at a calendar and pick the date. You tell us which one's
Yeah,
going to
you'll
have
have
the
time.
most people, and
Yeah.
let's go for it.
We have to be nice to Lisa.
That's right.
She's in
She sent me
charge
2
of this,
emails
right.
today.
It's her big event.
And the concerts, will they still be at Carnegie this year?
No, the concerts have moved to the end of the Oregon
Oh,
Trail.
they are going to move this year. Even
just
the
in-
library's not going to be moving dirt, are they?
They're going to be doing some, I think they're getting ready for some work, but we're also getting geared up for that transition time. It
Great.
worked really well over there. So we have the available parking, we have all the power. The stage will be coming in online there. So we kind of want to, even if it's not quite done, we want people to be prepared and excited about the project.
And it's a great idea.
Yeah. Okay.
Great venue.
Just thinking about the movies down there, though. I mean, not the movies, the concerts
Concerts.
down there. You know, at the Carnegie, there's the spray park for the kids. So are we going to need to bring in a bounce house or something for children's activities for those concerts? Because that's been kind of something really nice for the parents.
I know that my maintenance staff and I have talked about that transition and the lack of child activities. So we've been discussing just in-house. We haven't really put anything out there, but just knowing that budget will always be a factor. Long-term, what would we want to look to see on that site for kids in general? Since that seems to like not be going away and the museum's getting a lot more popular again. The picnic shelters are there. What would we do? So we've been bouncing those ideas around. I haven't
pun.
talked to Scott about it.
No pun intended.
What's that?
That's a good thought, though. We
Yeah.
we may want to think about some of those types of things, and yeah, kind of the long term and the short term. I think is
Okay.
both.
All right,
Yeah,
just-
good thought.
Okay, anything more on the park day? So we'll wait to see the movie schedule, pick our night. I'm just looking, I would think we'd want to avoid the 22nd, because if Johnny Limbo and the Lug Nuts is on the 21st, there's a lot of people that probably wouldn't come out again the next night for another event. Maybe I'm overthinking it, but anyway, we'll see based on the movie schedule. Okay, so we'll move on to annual report to the City Commission and goals review and off-leash dog park recommendation. That'll all happen at the same time. And you've got in the
Well-
package, you've got
Does the goals review happen at the same time?
no. I'm
Okay.
sorry. That isn't what I really meant.
Thank you.
Presenting our report to the commission, which
Yeah.
always includes our goals and the recommendation. So
Okay.
you've got a copy of our current goals. You've also got the information that Sean was nice enough to put together, his thoughts on the process. So maybe just real quick, we'll look at our current goals one by one and decide whether they need to stay or whether they would go away. Number one is identify funding for Phase 2 and complete development of Wesley Lynn Park. And I don't know that these are in any particular order. They're just
They're
on
not
the list.
not
Yeah.
necessarily.
Okay. And I think that's one that stays there. We haven't, there's not the funding, as we know, to really move ahead with it. But I think it's something that is still on our plate.
Is that in everybody's packet, or did you print that off?
I may have, but
I printed one off for
Okay.
me.
That's why I looked over and saw two. And
Yeah, I didn't have
print
one
that
either.
copy.
Oh, okay, here. Well, that's, you guys take that one and I'll work off of this. We'll work off this one together.
I did include I know, Sean, you sent around some working ideas. I also sent around, is this what you're referring to? Is
Yeah.
that list? Okay.
And he
Was
was
that-
just happened to be reading it, and I didn't.
Is that on your screen? It's supposed to be.
No.
We must have missed that. I'm sorry. I apologize.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't see it.
I intended for that to be on your electronic stuff, so I apologize that wasn't.
No.
I've got a couple extra copies here if anybody wants another hard copy. Good.
I think we're okay. Determine future plans for RV park. Do we need to reword that somehow?
For RV camping park.
RV camping. RV camp park.
RV campground.
RV campground.
My thought when I reworded that was we're not really determining the future of it now. We've determined it, and so let's implement it. Let's move it to the next phase.
Monitor progress, something,
Of the RV park master plan?
yeah.
My comment was, the plan implementation. Something along
Implement.
that.
Okay.
Implement.
But implementing the master plan means build it, right?
Mhm.
And we're not, that's not even,
That's not our job.
No.
and it's not, it's
Um,
not, but I think monitoring or what's the right word? Being involved in the development of the master plan is what is our goal for the shorter term.
I think that's done
That's a
now,
continue review of the
I
master
think
plan.
it's not done.
we certainly, one of the
Yeah.
things that
Or
you
is
do as a committee is advocate for projects in terms of getting things funded, and, we do the work, but now that we'll have a master plan to work with, the next thing is, we're going to look for how are we going to fund this? How are we going to eventually build it? So, you could use language along the lines of supporting or promoting the project or something like that. So, I mean, that's the next big thing is going to be figuring out how to pay for
Advocating.
it.
Just figure out this next big thing is what?
How to pay for it.
Ah.
Yeah.
That's
That's
not
going to take
bad.
some time.
Provide input, monitor progress. I don't know. Advocate, all those good words.
Joyce said advocate. Advocate the implementation of the RV
Yeah.
park master plan.
Right?
Advocate for implementation of RV park master plan. I like that.
That's a good one.
Now, are we still thinking about
Of
having
RV
a
campground master
goal
Yeah.
setting?
Yeah, last meeting we had talked about having a
Yeah.
goal-setting work session,
Yes.
and I still think that would be a good
So,
idea. Maybe
yeah.
before
If
the
we need
next
to-
meeting, meet at 6 instead of 6:30. Presumably, the next meeting would have interviews at 6:30. If we could squeeze a 6.
Kind of depends on how many applicants we end up with.
True.
But, you know, so just
Something to
think
throw
about
out
that.
there.
So you're saying instead of working on these goals now, do it in a separate work session?
That was what we discussed last
Okay.
month, was to kind of
That's
keep
fine.
where we more sitting around a table instead of in a
I
public
think we
forum.
could do a lot better
Okay.
job if we
Yeah.
did that.
Okay.
I
All
took
right.
your ideas and try to work with them
Yeah.
and just put down some of the things that moved along.
That's what some of these
Obviously,
do.
like number one, for example, identify funding for phase 2. I just threw in some words to support completion of the development of Wesleyan Park. And I just tried to move it along from where it was the last time these goals were set.
Right.
And it's pretty hard to do that, just sitting here.
Okay.
Okay.
The goal-setting
All right.
work session, so it's going to be at 6 o'clock on the third Thursday of,
Fourth Thursday
fourth
of
Thursday
February.
of
So,
February.
28, but if we have
a half
three
an hour
interviews to
before
do-
the interviews are scheduled is what we're looking at, right? So
Let's pencil it in and then
Um,
see if it.
we can kind of do an email thing and see how it plays
Yeah.
out.
Mhm.
Yeah, if it needs to be at 5:30, I don't know.
It'd be
Let's put-
helpful if it would send out a fresh copy of the current goals. That would be helpful, and then I think many of these would stay on, but they'd be in a different phase. We've
Right.
moved ahead, and so
Right.
give us a chance to give us some thought to it
Mhm.
and propose some ideas.
So what I'm hearing
Okay,
is,
that's good.
is I'll schedule something kind of like a work session, 30 minutes prior to the interview times beginning.
Yeah.
Hopefully that would be 6 o'clock, but it could be a little bit earlier depending on the number of applicants.
Yeah, I think one of the reasons why we delayed the goal setting was because we were hoping we would be at full staff at that point, that we would have the additional members, but we're having to delay that at this time.
Yeah, and that would really
So,
push us to March if we kept having to wait.
Hopefully the applicants that, I don't know, they couldn't come to the work session. I don't know, because they're going to be interviewed after the work session. So that's what I'm wondering, if maybe a different time needs to be set for the work session instead of before the meeting.
I have no problem meeting on another day completely.
Whatever.
Well, we're going to be I agree with you, Joyce, but we're going to be a long ways out if we wait until after we interview a month from now, and then Mayor Neely has to appoint. So we'd be looking at, if we wanted new members to be a part of that, we'd be looking at least March.
Right. Okay, it's
Right.
just, so, yeah.
Keep in mind that I'm just giving you some additional info to think about here. Your report to the commission, though it is tied to your goals, your report is really kind of a progress, like this is what we've been doing for the last about a year or so. You don't necessarily have to have your new goals completed when you give a report to the commission, so
Right. It's related to last year's goals.
yeah.
Right.
So,
Just kind of food
Yeah.
for thought on that, so,
Okay.
as far as timing.
Well, do we want to do it then at our February meeting, or do we want to wait and hope we can have some more members? Do it later.
In my experience, when I first came out, I wouldn't have been much help trying to work on goals for the advisory committee. I mean, I would have been a listener rather than a contributor.
yeah, I think that's true. I think if I was a new person coming on, I'd want to just see it laid out in front of me and let me jump in feet first and participate, rather than.
Okay, then sounds like we'll try for next month.
Yeah.
Before the meeting. Okay. All right. Now I've lost my agenda. Sorry.
So it's kind of a
Camping in parks.
So
What?
Well,
this is kind of a two-part line item, though. So goals
Oh.
review we've moved, and
Oh, sorry.
and then there's
So
still
the-
the annual report.
the
from the
annual
commission
report.
for it.
You're right.
correct.
Okay.
So I guess the idea with the annual report is just looking at if you wanted to try to select a date to go to the commission. It's at a regular commission meeting, which are the first and third Wednesdays of every month, and 10-minute presentation or whatever. Typically, the chair has done that. If you wanted to wait until you have a new chair to do that, or the current one, whatever you. Or it could even be a different person. It could just be a representative that's willing and able to go do that to the commission.
Mike, have you done it before?
Uh-huh.
I think it'd be nice if it was tag team with
The new-
with Mike and the new one.
Right. I like that idea. That was
So
could be my
that
suggestion.
you say what we've done and they
Mhm.
say this is kind of where we plan to go at this time. We haven't had our goal setting session
Good
yet.
idea.
Actually, we will have if we wait for a new chair.
Yeah, that puts it out quite a ways again.
Well, but I can't do it with a new chair until we elect a new chair next month.
Correct.
And that'll be the 28th.
Right. So it would be in March.
And
I mean, there's nothing magical
27th,
about,
yes.
about when we do it.
you just
We're about the only group that still does it, right?
well, actually, now I think you were on the forefront of that. You were one of the pioneers of doing that. But now
Transportation.
Commission has asked that all boards and committees give an annual report, so more have started doing it now. I think you guys were some of the
Is it first and
Yeah,
third Wednesdays?
first and third Wednesday of every month. So you need to do it at some point, but I don't think there's a magic timeline.
I like your idea of just waiting until the new chair. Frankly, I mean, it's not a time-related issue. It doesn't have to be after January 1 every year. And my only thought with asking if you'd be willing to do it, at least from part of it, was I know
yeah, I will.
I know your efforts, even with the dog park stuff a year ago or two when we had those meetings.
Yeah.
I think you'd be a great person to do it,
I-
regardless of who's incoming.
Right.
I'd like to see you.
That was what I was going to suggest, was that I do it with whoever's coming in.
Yeah, I think it's a great idea.
Okay.
Joyce.
All right. So, and then I'll work on, between now and our next meeting, I've got what the city commission's accomplishments. A lot of these are related to parks, and I can work with Scott and Denise on what we've gotten done, kind of give you a rough outline next time of what would be part of it, and get your input on what needs to be added to it.
Okay.
Okay. All right, camping in parks, proposed change to the municipal code.
Get some info for you. I'll give you a briefing here. I need to get my info out.
A lot of paper here. I keep losing my stuff. That must be for you. Yeah, I got it.
I don't see a proposed change.
So on your should be on your screens, and the information that we sent out to you, the kind of a redlined few paragraphs of the camping ordinance.
There you go.
Are you finding that?
Okay,
Does everybody have that on there?
got it.
Okay. So, just as a kind of a how we got here and what we're talking about, a quick sort of a reminder, because we've talked about this a little bit here and there, but bringing it back, back in this past summer, I think in July, it was in July, the commission received a request from the Confederated Tribes of the Grand Ronde to do a special overnight event at Clackamet Park, and kind of a ceremonial thing, and then do an overnight stay. And this request had been supported before in years past when this type of thing had happened. And so some discussion we had at that time with the commission, and then subsequently we had some discussion here with PRAC, was that, technically we can't really say yes to that. We may, we've made some exemptions, but we're really, when we do that, we're not doing that consistent with our city code, which says that camping is not allowed in parks. So what the commission did was they, in order to accommodate that one specific request, they did a quick and kind of a 30-day suspension of that rule to allow that to happen, because the commission wanted to accommodate that request. And then what the commission asked was that that PRAC consider this issue and then report back to them. So this might be one of those things that you report back in your annual report as well. We talked about it a little bit here and there, but we had some other timely issues and some other things come up, and we can only cover so many things when we meet once a month. So this one kind of got bounced back a couple of meetings, but it's back in front of you now. With the assistance of our city attorney, what you're seeing is the top of the page that's titled 12.16.040 camping that's directly out of our city code, and basically that's been redlined and kind of tweaked a little bit by our city attorney with the caveat that the idea was here's a starting point to look at. Do we want to allow camping in parks with the understanding that it would be allowed kind of as an approval type situation, not just blanketly change the rule, but that it would be allowed. And we have a section in our code that gives the city manager the ability to basically amend rules as needed in parks, not change the city code, but just amend. We have what are called rules, which are basically, you can or can't do these types of things or what have you that are not necessarily in the code. So the idea was just to kind of cover it with that, so that if we got these special requests, we could consider them, and then ultimately the city manager would make the decision. It's a little bit of a sticky wicket because, as our attorney points out, if you open this up, you can't really then discriminate and say, well, you're good to go, but we don't like you or what you do. We don't support that, so we don't want you to camp in the park. So it's a little bit dicey, but the commission did specifically say we'd like to try to figure something out. We can put some things in this language, and this is where you come in as a committee, is making recommendations or advising staff and the commission on this to maybe come up with some parameters, such as the size of the group. We would only do this in specific parks, like for example Clackamet. We would limit the length of stay for groups to do this, or some things like that. So those are some things that we might want to consider. Some of the other things that have come up, just to give you an idea of what we're talking about here. So things like the tribal request that we got, maybe that happens once a year. We've just recently received a request from an organization that is a bicycling group that goes around the state. This is not the Bicycle Oregon event, but another bicycle touring group that specifically wants to use Clackamet Park as a stopover point on their tour this coming year, this summer. And we had to sort of tell them, well, technically we can't say yes to you. We'd love to, because they want to bring people to our town and they want to spend the night and spend money in our restaurants. And they, part of their thing is it's a lot of retired folks, and they like to go to the restaurants and eat, and they like to have some beers, and we'd love to support your local businesses, kind of a thing. So we get those types of requests. And the other thing is, for the other example is, every year we do the Pioneer Family Festival, and in order to accommodate that group, there's a need to allow some of the folks that work at the event to basically stay in the park temporarily. We've probably done some things that are not lining up with our code very well. It's one of those things. It's been going on so long that you kind of almost forget that, oh yeah, we have this little problem. So some things like that we would specifically say we're allowing that to happen because it supports this community festival that we're doing. So you don't have to, you can digest this information and talk about it next month if you want. You may want to brainstorm a little bit. But basically, that's kind of where we're at. So the commission has specifically asked you for a recommendation, and they, with the understanding that they would, the commission would like to adjust, would like to amend our code to make some provision to be able to do, have some flexibility in this part of our code.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
Is it possible to get copies of the regulations that the state parks use in terms of appropriate activities and fees and regulations and activities and that they allow?
Sure, we can do that. Yeah.
So that whoever does this doesn't start from scratch, but there must be places where these types of questions have been asked before. And I see that PRAC has some pretty major responsibility in reading. The city staff recommends that PRAC submit a recommendation to the city commission about next steps. So we would be, after this trial period goes on, I guess, then we would be asked to make recommendations to, I guess, adopt formal rules, or I'm not sure what the next step
Well,
would be.
to recommend, what you're being asked to do, actually, the commission specifically asked you to make some recommendations back to them on amending our city code that currently just strictly just prohibits camping, except for the RV park. That's a designated, use that is specifically called out. But other than that, any other type of camping is not allowed. So they've asked you to give them some suggestions as to how we would amend this rule.
Scott, did we get a report back from the event that did happen from the Grand Ronde tribes? How successful was that event? Were there any problems? What was the condition of the park after they pulled up their tent pegs?
Yes, we did. Our staff worked closely with them to set things up and to facilitate and to help them out, and then also, make sure when you're done, and here's the areas that we want you in, not over here, but over here. It worked great. And that's the type of thing is like if we had the ability to accommodate groups with special requests that we can then go and work with them. But that particular one was great.
I always think of the notion of insurance, liability insurance. If somebody gets hurt, or is the city on the hook?
We typically do that under a special. We would do that. We do a lot of special event permits for if somebody's doing a fun run and using the park or whatever. We have a special event permit that covers, among other things, covers the liability. They do a certificate naming the city additionally insured. So we have those in place that I would assume that we would just apply that to this would be considered a special event. So I think we've got that part pretty well down. So again, just what we're looking at here is, do you support this? First of all, I guess that's the first question. Do you support this change, amendment to the city code of allowing for some camping? Do we want to put it, just that it's only at Clackamat Park or other parks? And do we want to put other parameters on it, like we've talked about, maybe no more than X amount of nights?
I have a question for you. Related to what we're looking at, it's that 12-16-040. Well, the redlining in and out, is that related to what the city attorney is proposing a change to be? So,
Right.
So help me if I can kind of make this simple for myself. First, we have to say, should we change the existing code?
Yep.
Yes or no? If we get past that, then do we like this current wording? Yes or no, and how would we tweak it? And then would the third step be, if we leave this code alone, then do some other modifications in park policy as opposed to city code? Park policy being which parks it's in, size of groups. Is that something that needs to be done here in the municipal code, or would that be in policy that then could be developed as a follow-on?
Good questions. The first answer is yes. What you're looking at is a red line, just edited version of the existing code as a discussion starting point for here's what you might consider. So that was just kind of, it's very, as you see there, it's very basic. Our attorney has just stricken a few words, stricken basically the word prohibited, and added that camping may be allowed under rules adopted by the city manager. In other words, the city manager can approve special requests, as we do in some other park rules things. So I'm sorry. So you can work with this as a guideline for your discussion. You can add to it. You can change it as far as your recommendation. You can make it more explanatory than this, or less, more restrictive than this, whatever. The last part of your question, Sean, would all of that stuff be in the code, or could it be under park rules? Either or. You could cite that, just reference park rules, and then under park rules, that's kind of like more the administrative side. Then we would specifically list those things, or we could be restrictive and just put everything right in the code and say we're only going to allow it at these locations under these conditions, and that could be in the city code. So that's kind of
that answered
open.
my question.
That's open.
Thank you.
It's an open discussion, and we're just at the very beginning of this discussion as far as how we want to shape this.
So on point number D, or letter D, where it's talking about camping may be allowed under rules adopted by the city manager. So is that another place where they're asking for our guidance on what should those rules be that aren't necessarily in the code, but it's what he would use to decide whether or not whatever particular event comes along meets what we intended?
Yes.
Okay.
Potentially. Again, if you want to. If you don't want to get that far into the detail and you just want to leave it broad and say, here's what we're saying is we want to allow flexibility, and we'll leave that up to the staff to make those decisions. Or if you want to get more restrictive in your recommendation and say we kind of aren't really comfortable with that, we'd rather see it be more restrictive. It's open to discussion.
Mike, could I?
Yeah.
Let me share then what I'm thinking. I'm thinking that I would want to support allowing camping on temporary bases, first of all. So answering the question, yes, I think we should do something. Two, I don't think I would want to change what the attorney has written. So the less words, the better here to me. And then I would think that, at least as a starting point, city staff probably has a very good feeling of what, in terms of policy, might want to be developed, and then bring that piece back to us just for final, for a review and approval, and then we could adopt those recommendations from a policy standpoint, whether it be one or all parks, whether it be groups up to, say, 50, whether there's a group camping fee charged. I think all those things could be reviewed as a follow-on amongst us and staff, as opposed to, and leaving this simple question, yes, City Commission, we'd like to do it, here's the wording, and forward it back. That's what I would.
We would be happy to do that. I think we can draft some of those types of parameters. I've already got some thoughts, but I don't want to get too deep into the woods on that stuff tonight, but we could bring back some of those things for further discussion that we would consider, what we would recommend.
I think I could look at those independent of this, I guess, is my thought.
Okay. Yeah, because you might just support this the way it's written, but refer to another set of rules for this specific thing.
And I'm thinking right now, because of January, I don't have a problem with almost moving forward with this at any time if the rest of the group chose.
My only question is what it means by rules adopted by the city manager pursuant to section 121620B of this code, when I don't.
I'll tell you what that is. We can print that part of the code out at the next meeting.
Okay.
But that basically Let me find it real quick here and just read it to you verbatim so I'm not. Bear with me just a second.
No, I'm going to ask him as soon as I find out.
So there's another section. We have regulations for parks. So it gives, in the city code, it gives some regulations that are listed. Hours of city parks, things such as building fires, whether that's allowed. Not allowed to hunt in our parks and things like that. You're not allowed to sell goods or services in our parks without permission. You're not allowed to put up any signs in parks without permission of the city. Some things like that. A few other random things. You're not. By the way, you're not allowed to engage in or sponsor fighting, boxing, or wrestling in parks.
Oh, did that come after
That specifically came out
Singer
from
Hill?
something that happened a long time
Oh,
ago.
yeah.
Yeah.
That was going
So
on.
then at the end of that section, so that basically is sort of our adopted park regulations by city code. We also have some specific park rules that might apply to some specific areas, and like the skate park, we have rules that are just for the skate park. Those are not in the code, but they are adopted by this blanket few sentences in here under that section that, in essence, it says the city manager is hereby authorized to adopt such additional rules and regulations not in conflict with the ordinance of the city as the manager finds necessary for the control and the management of city parks. And it goes on with some other stuff with that. So in essence, what is in the code is that the city manager, and usually it's designated to my position, to the park director. If you need to devise specific rules in parks, we have a process by which we do that. So again, I think the best example I can think of is when we built the skate park, or when we do something like that, when we open a new wading pool, spray pool. We have rules that say, do this and don't do that, and the hours of the spray park are this, and at the skate park you're allowed to do these things or not allowed to do those things. As we put into place new rules like that are not in conflict with other rules in the code, the city manager can authorize those things. So that, what you just asked, Joyce, is a reference to that rule
In a
the
blanket
city
statement
code.
rule.
So basically, we're referencing that and saying we already have this thing that says the city manager can approve things, and as we make rules. So that's where it goes back to like what you were saying, Sean, about we might leave this code change as it is and just reference that, and then we can also drill down on the specifics of this camping stuff as a separate kind of a sub rule that's allowable within our code by that. That gives us the authority to set those kind of rules within the parks.
And I like that because
that
then
makes
this
sense.
this group can influence it
Right.
without having to make larger citywide code changes as well.
Right.
And if it turned out to not be right, it's easier to tweak it than
That's exactly
something that's written into the code.
Yep.
I guess, as I look at this thing, how does this not prevent staying in the RV park?
It's referenced specifically that there are. I'm not going to find it on the spot here. I don't think.
So somewhere else in the
It
code
says, basically where it says that camping is prohibited, it says except as areas identified for camping purposes,
Okay.
which is the RV park.
Okay.
Which falls back to that thing that I just told you, that we have identified that as a camping place, but only in recreational vehicles, not in tents. So we have some
Special
special rules for that. Yeah. So it's covered.
Okay.
At any time, would we consider allowing camping at any other park? I guess that's when I'm looking at this. Camping may be allowed in city parks. We could say, limited camping may be allowed at Clackamat Park under rules adopted by this, if we wanted to be a little more specific on that. Or do we need to have it more general?
I'd like the language more open, like Sean said, then it gives us more say, I'd say, in the process, and then laying out some rules and for special considerations, and makes it easier for that process.
Yeah, being somebody that lives on a city park, I would be definitely opposed to having campsites behind my house. But I'm apprehensive to put it in writing in this on this piece.
Like
think
if they
it
wanted
might-
to have an
might-
overnight soccer clinic and have kids stay in tents out there in the
Right.
park one night
Yeah.
during the summer for a educational event.
Exactly. That's why I don't know what that need's going to be, and so I don't want to prohibit it. I remember as a teenager in Boy Scouts camping at McIver State Park in places that are now the Frisbee golf areas, which are completely prohibited. But they had obviously some ordinance that allowed 300 or 400 scouts to camp for a major event in those fields. And I keep visioning back to that as I don't know what it's going to be. Your idea of a soccer thing is a perfect example, though,
feasible?
of something
Yeah.
where I would be like, well, why would we stop that?
Right.
So I'd be apprehensive of putting it Clackamat Park only in this document.
Okay.
And defer to Scott and Denise really almost when it comes down to that point. Let you guys have the authority to.
I think that's the idea. Is definitely to give some parameters, but allow it to be with some discretion as far as we know that if we put 100 people at this park, that's not going to make people happy. So we're not going to do that. We do that anyway with certain things and special event requests that we get that are going to have a negative impact that we deny sometimes for events. But so it kind of falls into that same type of a thing where we'd be looking to at least develop the idea that we have the authority to do this, but we've got to use some discretion about how we do it. So.
I'm all for keeping it vague and having it in rules rather than in the code, but to my mind, the only place that it's appropriate is Clackamat, because every other park has neighbors.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't want to be Scott the morning after.
I wouldn't want to be me either.
Oh, yeah. Clackamat Park does not have residential neighbors. It's
Except for the
unique.
hotel, yeah.
Yeah, well, and it's a ways away.
Yeah, it's away.
And
they're from out of
Sean's
town.
backyard. All the rest of them are in somebody's backyard, and
Except for the Cove.
well,
Is
the
that-
cove's not.
Really park property.
Yeah, eventually, but that'll be residential eventually. My recommendation, and I think we're just brainstorming here, so none of this is firm, but we're just talking a little bit. Is Clackamat is really our only, as by definition, is a regional park. Everything else that we have is either a nature park, a neighborhood park, or a community park, which imply more local use types of things. Regional park is more of one that has a bigger draw outside the city, and it brings people in, and it has the amenities, and it doesn't have the impact with being right in a neighborhood and so forth. So, my recommendation would probably be that we come up with something that mostly limits this idea to Clackamat, and but we can
At
work
the
through
end of
that.
the Oregon Trail.
Well, that's a good one too, because
Right.
actually we've had some requests about that, like with some biking events
Or
and
possible
things.
future.
That's actually kind of
I
a
just would.
Yeah, or future parks, like you said.
future
Yeah,
parks that
yeah,
you don't
so-
foresee yet.
we could come up.
So
Well,
the-
let's work on some language, but I think kind of steering the language in the direction of those types of that. Clackamat, possibly. Actually, you just said EOT. That's a great thought, because there's aspects of that now that you would say that's a regional park as well. So maybe I misspoke about Clackamat, because that probably is more of a regional type of a park as well.
What does the rest of the group think about kind of the first two things? One, making a change to the city code and going with their language for this part, and then addressing policy or implementation in a separate phase.
I think that's the right process. Keep it out of the code. Keep the rules out of the code, and this would make it allowable according to the other rules.
The reason I ask is we read this document a couple months ago. Are we in a position to possibly vote this first step forward? I don't see any reason why not.
But, so what we would do is recommend these wording changes to City Commission.
Yes.
as drafted by the attorney. I think that's Scott.
Yeah.
But with the understanding that you'll be helping staff develop some parameters
Yeah.
to
Yes.
The rules.
Right.
what we're
That
comfortable
would come
with.
after this.
Right.
This is first step. Has to.
That certainly is one way you can approach it. You can do it all together, or you can do it that way as well, whichever you prefer. I'm comfortable with that because I know that we're going to want those parameters, so I'm going to definitely be bringing those back and talking to you about them and getting some input and getting some support on what we want to do. So
Are you
So
okay
is
with
that-
that, Joyce?
Yeah, I would make that motion.
Then I'll second it.
Okay.
Okay. So it's moved and seconded that we recommend to the commission that this wording to the code be approved with the understanding that PrAC will work with staff to develop rules or guidelines for implementing camping on special occasions.
Yes.
Okay? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay. The train keeps moving.
that was a good conversation. Thank you
Yeah, it was.
for the input.
Any other general business? Scott, I have a question. The update on the RFP for the 2 parks, is that will that be
Staff
covered in your report?
I'll be giving you that as a staff report.
Okay. So then is there any other general business? All right, then PrAC member reports. Adam, anything?
Nothing.
John?
I have nothing.
I don't either.
I have my tickets to this first Thursday event at the Keene Great Room at the Pearl District in Portland on February 6th. I already know that I have reservation. The tickets are free, but they want to know how many people are coming. So you can get online and RSVP.
Well, represent us well.
Where do you
Okay.
go? Where do you go online? Is it the Willamette Falls?
It's the Willamette
Oh.
Falls Eventbrite.com. It's
Where it says
Yes.
RSVP? Okay. Yeah.
right next to that.
All right. I guess I should just read that. Okay. Anything else?
I just have
Bob?
one thing. You probably all got this mailer from
It's a
Metro.
wonderful thing, yes.
And
No.
it has a very nice article about a canyon rising, about the Newell Creek Canyon. And
When did you get that?
I'm assuming you all
my
got
mail
copies of it.
Yeah, we'll
Yesterday.
be getting it soon. I've
It's a
had a
very
bunch of people come
interesting
and talk to me about it. too.
article, just to call that to your attention.
Yes, and William Difford is quoted in there.
That's
Wow.
right, that's right.
We know him. Some of us know him better than
Oh,
others.
I read that article online. That's why that sounded so familiar.
And this, I would suggest this might be part of our goals for 2014, is
Well,
any way we can to follow this issue.
Yeah, and in my draft, I specifically put it because of reading that article.
There it is.
and if I may say, I do. We're working. Oregon City Trail Alliance, our nonprofit with First City Cycles, has been working with Metro Regional Government on this project and help get it on their agenda for this next year. So we're very proud of that and hopeful for that project.
Great.
Yeah, I think that's a huge benefit to the city, and I'm not sure. Are you familiar with what we're talking about? Do you want to kind of
Well, I
give
mean,
a couple minutes? Because I think it's really exciting and it's
I mean,
new.
a big part of it is Newell Creek Canyon is a big piece of land, 270 acres or so, owned by Metro Regional Government, bought up by Metro Regional Government, with some great creeks and a lot of natural areas. And they want to open that up to the public. They want to bring in some hiking and possible biking trails, as well as clear out some of the riffraff that has been inhabiting the area, and then just also protect the streams and the watershed for the salmon runoffs that do come all the way up into Newell Creek Canyon and all that sort of stuff. So with the OCTA, Oregon City Trail Alliance, that we started at First City Cycles, a nonprofit, we've been working with the people at Metro and pushing this agenda. And working with the Greater Oregon City Watershed Council and Mayor Neely and some other people that are, Shaw Spady and some others that are really involved in it. And we really would love to see a great, area opened up. If you've ever had the pleasure of being in there, it's like stepping into another world. And it's right in the heart of Oregon City, and it's, 30 seconds out my back door, so it's really awesome.
And you can drive right by it and never see it.
Yeah, it's incredible.
It's kind of hidden.
Yeah. And I found a mountain lion cave down there, cougar cave
Wow.
and track. So I know they exist down there, so that's pretty impressive. So
Is there a map on Metro's website or something? that
There
shows
is a
where,
map,
what their where their ownership is?
yep, there is a map that'll show their ownership as well as some suggested plans for some trail access and that sort of stuff. So there's some great stuff on there. I believe it's the Metro Master Planner for Newell Creek Canyon is what you can find it on.
And they've been doing a lot of work down there, pulling out the invasive cherry trees, and the chainsaws I think have stopped for now, but they did a lot of work down there.
And we personally did a couple work days where we pulled, I think, like 20 shopping carts out of the creek for just, the homeless camps that bring the shopping carts and then just dump them into the creek. So there's a lot of that affects the salmon runoff as well. It's kind of upsetting, but it's a beautiful area, and we hope to open it up to everybody. So.
Great. And that would be Metro leading the charge?
Metro is definitely leading the charge. They own the land, and they're the ones holding the key, but they said it is on their number one priority for this area for the next year. So they're big into the project and excited about it.
And as kind of an add-on to that, I think that ties to, so last year, you recall that Metro passed a regional levy, not a bond measure, but an operating levy, which gives them some actual like maintenance and operation funds that they didn't previously have. So what Metro's been doing, over the last going on 20 years, I guess, with the two big bond measures, is buying a lot of open space, but really having little resources to manage them and even to develop, any kind of infrastructure. So what this levy is doing for the residents of the Metro region is giving, Metro will now be able to do some of the things that they're looking at Newell Creek. So actually getting in and doing some things that get some public access and things like that. They're also doing the same thing on other properties in Oregon City. The other big property that they have is Kenema Bluffs. And I think we've talked about this before. So they're also looking at they have some plans to do some very interesting things at Kenema Bluffs with enhancing some of the trail systems. There's some real rough trails in there right now, but doing some better better signage, but also some trail improvements and some different management things. And so there's some of that stuff that's going on that Oregon City is going to be the recipient of some good things, because we have two really big Metro properties in our city or right on our boundaries. So good stuff with that.
And to make a point on that, if you want to see a really good example of a master planner, is the master planner for that Kenema Bluff area. It shows you really the process that Metro goes through to make sure everything is accounted for and that everyone's opinions are taken into consideration. It was really impressive. It's like 93 pages or something like that.
Yeah, and I think the way I saw it after that article was, Metro's leading the charge now, but there's nothing to say that we can't be a significant stakeholder in the process. Watching when Metro came in and purchased the trolley right-of-ways through Gladstone and Oak Grove, they sat on that for quite a few years and then partnered with North Clackamas Parks. And really, North Clackamas Parks owns that now and maintains it. But Metro helped support that process. So I think the fact that this is in our city, we should be, cornerstone plank holders, stakeholders in what's going on there.
Okay. Staff reports.
Were you done with any other reports from members? You guys done with that? Okay.
That's it.
So staff reports, got a few items for you. First of all, last evening I attended the Illuminate Oregon City Artist Reception and Street Party, which is the brand new project at the Elevator. Just started up this week. Every night when it's dark now, you can go downtown and look at the Elevator, and it's an amazing thing that they did where they've got projected scenes of different things that were filmed around Oregon City. So live motion pictures and things that are actually being projected onto the Elevator, and that was dedicated last night. That was done as a partnership thing between Main Street Oregon City, Clackamas County Arts Alliance, and Oregon City, our city. There was a significant grant that I think it was $100,000 that was obtained from the National Endowment for the Arts. It was like a 2-year process to get to that, and so great kickoff party last night. And so as you're in downtown, and it'd be really, coming from like the westland side of the bridge, and driving into Oregon City, you'll see at night you'll see the elevator all lit up, but with these scenes on the actual column, and it's kind of a unique, one of a kind type of thing. So, if you weren't aware of that, I wanted to let you know about that and encourage you to go downtown and check that out. Really awesome. A few other things. A report, just an update on our master planning process for our 2 parks, Glen Oak and Filbert Run. I put at your places it says on their draft, just wanted to be careful about that because it hasn't been officially published, but it's about to be, so that's not the official document, but that's basically a cover sheet, which would be like an advertisement. If you guys want one of those, you're welcome to have one. That is kind of the advertisement piece for the master planning process. Actually had intended for that to be advertised this week. I had a significant family emergency over the last week or so, and was not able to get that published this week. But this is the advertisement that will be out next week. It'll be advertised through a number of different outlets. We advertise in a trade magazine called the Portland Daily Journal of Commerce, which is basically where all the architects and consultant type folks look for jobs to bid on, and that they would be looking for that. And then we have an RFP website RFP page on our website that consultants link onto, and so that is going to be advertised. There's some information in that gives you a little bit of kind of what it says, and the date of when we're accepting those until, and so forth. So if you have any questions about that, feel free to let me know. I will be talking to you more about that process, and also, as we've talked about before, looking for folks to maybe sit on the selection panel once we are done with the advertisement. Mike, we talked about you at the last meeting. You weren't here, as being both a PrAC representative but also representing the Glen Oak neighborhood area.
Mm-hmm.
If you'd still be interested in that.
Absolutely.
And I think Mr. O'Brien has indicated his interest in being a representative from the neighborhood association around Filbert Run Park. So one of the things that PrAC had talked about previously was making sure that we had citizen representation on the panel to represent the 2 parks. So if you're still confirmed on that, then we'll go forth with that.
I would love to do that.
Is that Thursday, February 13th date tried and true? I mean, is that what you're going to use, or because it didn't get published in time? Are you
that was
okay with
actually,
that?
but yeah, originally it was a week earlier than that, so that's been bumped out an extra week. So unless there's any hang up in the publication process, that will be the date. So yeah, I see what you're saying. Make sure that we accounted for the fact that it got delayed a week. I bumped that date out that you're seeing in there, if that's what you're asking. Okay, let's see. Clackamat Boat Ramp. Wanted to make sure you're aware of what was going on there. I think you saw the emails and some of the notices that we put out about the fact that in the month of December we had to close, and it's indefinite right now, the boat ramp at Clackamat Park because of damage that occurred from the river. Pretty significant issues there, where basically the erosion had gotten to the point where it was pulling panels out into the river, and we had to do kind of an emergency shoring up so that it didn't degrade worse, and also so we didn't send these huge concrete panels downriver. We don't think our environmental agencies would appreciate that very well. So we got it shored up, and now what we're trying to do is figure out going forward how to deal with that problem. We met, actually Denise and I just met this afternoon with a number of folks who came up from Salem from the Oregon State Marine Board. The Marine Board is our partner in our public boating access facilities, the Clackamat one and the Sportcraft boat ramp. They are the main funding agency, but they're also the agency that supports us in our ongoing efforts, and they give us maintenance dollars for that, and they are great partners with the city in that. So they came out and they had a group of folks with technical expertise, and we kind of brainstormed some things, and we're trying to figure out. I mean, it's going to be a problem. We've already received some frustrated boat owners telling us they're frustrated with us about that, and we understand that, but there's nothing more that we can do right now. The solutions are likely to be very expensive, and what we're trying to figure out is how to determine the process of evaluating just how expensive the solutions are, what the options are, and if we fix it, is it going to just happen again? Is it worth the investment? So what we discussed today a little bit, and there's a lot of things up in the air, is doing some bringing in some hydrologist type folks and helping us get some answers to questions, just so we can have a baseline for this discussion going forward. Bottom line is, for now, through the upcoming fishing seasons, we're not going to have a boat ramp at Clackamat Park, and we're just going to do our best to put the word out. We are, again, working with the Marine Board. They do a lot of the outreach into the boating community and post notices and put things out in the press, and we're doing that ourselves. So that'll be kind of an ongoing issue, and as we have more to talk about, we'll certainly be sharing that with you. And if you get any feedback, you can certainly pass that along to us. So.
What is the closest boat ramp then? Do they just go across to Gladstone?
Sportcraft.
Just
Okay.
a quarter mile down the road.
Okay.
Yeah.
We're fortunate we have so many in such a close area.
Yeah, and then Belgian Bar right up the street.
Yeah.
Gladstone.
Yeah. So.
Was there a significant event that caused this? I don't
Go ahead,
remember.
Denise.
Yeah, that deep freeze that we had.
Okay. yeah.
Enough time of water bumping up against those panels, which had already, the anchoring or armoring of the rock that goes alongside our ramp had deteriorated, so the ramp's edge is exposed. We had enough water pushing up against that it froze and caused its own little block, pushed the panels up and pushed them over. And if you've ever seen, cars weigh a lot, but cars also float in the riverway. Same with this concrete panels. Although they're about 10,000 pounds each, you get enough hydrology underneath it, they start to float. So with that bit of freeze and enough wave action or river current action there, which is pretty swift on the Clackamas, it picked up the panels and popped them out of position. And they have like a tongue and groove placement, and enough of them popped loose with just the up and down motion that they clicked out of space and started heading over to the other lane. So, and just without all the armoring that we used to have there, it just undermined. Under the panels, we have a metal rail that it sits on, and between the panels and the rails and the ground is compacted gravel. So now we're left with, on the right-hand lane, the panels, they're just sitting over the metal railings, and then on the the left-hand lane, which was the one that looked the best, that panels popping over created an eddy to the other side and washed out underneath the left-hand lane, which actually is more dangerous because it's about, I want to say it's a little over 10 feet wide and 6 feet deep into the actual lane. So it's past the railings, so there's just no support underneath the left-hand side. So we armored so that we won't lose any more gravel underneath the left-hand side, and armored on the right-hand lane on the outside of the panel so we don't have lift. So everything's it looks like it's fixed, but it really isn't.
Armor as in rock, boulders,
Riprap,
riprap.
700 class riprap, so big rocks.
Did the Marine Board indicate any funding potential?
Yeah, we talked about that. Of course, that was one of the first things we asked, is we need money. They think that they can get us some help on doing a hydrology study of the conditions that are causing this problem, but also solutions to the problem. That study will probably cost upwards of $50,000, depending on how much we ask for. It's pretty technical work. There are Fish and Wildlife funds and boating funds that they want these boating access points open. So there's some agencies that might be able to help fund that part of it. And then going forward, depending on what those reports tell us, I don't know. But yeah, the boating, the Marine Board has ongoing grant programs that they fund both repairs and new facilities development. That's how we just rebuilt the the Sportcraft boat ramp and that type of thing. So we'll continue to be working on that. Yeah. Oh, yeah. And so yeah, we just received $10,000. The repair, kind of the shoring up that we were just talking about, the armoring and all that, just to keep things stabilized from getting worse. And we received an emergency grant for $10,000 from the Marine Board to help us cover the cost of that we just did. So yes, they're a great partner for sure. So, any more questions about that? A couple more items for you at your place. I put something that looks like that. It says City of Oregon City 2013 Accomplishments Awards Grants. That is just information for your reading enjoyment, and I just thought you might find it interesting to peruse at your leisure. The City Commission has what they're calling a midterm goals update retreat this Saturday that I'll be participating in with all the other city management staff and the commission. You recall that we're now in a 2-year budget cycle, which means we're also on a 2-year city goal cycle. We completed our first year, so this is the midpoint of that, and the commission has asked for a kind of a half-day retreat. Used to do like a 2-day goal-setting retreat, but this is just a mid-year update thing for goals. And as part of that, staff assembled a list of accomplishments and things that have taken place over the last year, so that in 2013. So this is for the whole city, not just our department. But I went through and highlighted things that were specific to Parks and Recreation and things that PRAC has been involved with, and things that are going on. But I just generally, as far as city knowledge and information, I thought you might enjoy taking a look at that. So that's just for you to take and do as you wish. And then lastly, we gave you a written recreation report, as we usually do, that if you have any questions about that. And then lastly, Denise is going to give you a brief report about some wildlife damage issues that we're having at the Cove property.
And no, this is not the ducks and the beavers. So, make that statement up front because I've gotten a lot of teasing over the last few weeks. We have some active beavers down along John Storm, the Clackamas Park, and the Cove site, and then along the River Access Trail. So that whole area is active beavers doing what they do. So we've, over some time, have found some significantly hazardous trees that the beavers have been working on. This guy can go through some trees pretty quick. With the water levels coming up and down, it's hard for us to kind of depict where he's going to be. The water level's been down lately, so that the trees were exposed. We could see them. And they were targeting our pathway, our multimodal pathway along the River Access Trail. So we had to take down 8 trees with a pretty imminent hazard to people on the trail. We closed the trail for one whole day. We went down there and we took down the hazardous trees that we felt were safe for us to do, and had to have a contractor come in and specially take down a few other trees that were heading for the Marine Patrol unit's facility that we weren't confident that we could quite level that up. So we have some really good guys on our crew that have some good expertise, as well as unfortunately in my younger years that's something we used to do too. So we took our expertise together and we all went out there and took care of those things. Unfortunately, we're a few trees less in the Cove site. Our standard practice for that type of area is to let the trees go ahead and go down, or land them out towards the land and get them back down on the bank. The beavers will then have easy access to material that they won't cause extra hazard to. So that's kind of our standard practice with trees of that area. So that's kind of where we're at with that one. We'll keep an eye on it. We have some other ones we're watching. If you go down there and you walk that pathway and you look down, there are quite a few trees that are probably on their edge of coming down, but not within a target range of anything hazardous to people or multimodal pathways. So we feel pretty secure at this point that we don't have any target trees, but we are going to keep an eye on that. That is, the guy on that route is very knowledgeable of where we're at and what to look for, and they're going to keep a good eye on it. We have, along our deferred maintenance line of parks items, Heart Key swings had to be decommissioned last week. The swing frames are the A-frame styles, and there are 3 sections, but the cuffs and the bushings weren't moving. The whole bars were moving. So if you guys hear that these swings are down, they aren't on our replacement schedule right now for that playground, but we definitely felt that they were enough of a hazard that they needed to come out immediately. So we are doing some of our due diligence with our playgrounds and really taking a hard look at things. We're making some repairs this week on things that needed repairs, and so the guys are hard at work trying to make sure those playgrounds are safe. We've had some great weather to be able to do some of this work, so we're making the best time of our good weather that we can. The Pioneer Center put out an appeal letter for the Meals on Wheels program, and so far they're in the upwards of $19,000 in fundraising for that. So that's the first year we've done a big appeal letter out to the public, and so it turned out really well. Rochelle's going to put out the vote for the movies. That'll be coming out pretty soon. She also has a big push for her Facebook site at the pool, so if you guys haven't gone to the Facebook site, please visit her. The concerts in the park are in your monthly reports, and just as a side note, things that we don't always finish when we're planning on finishing them, the Clackamas Sign Island is now complete. So we had a little waylay with a waterline break. We also then had needed to put some irrigation lines in there. So when the big grand opening for the art and the sign came upon us, we weren't quite finished, but we are now finished, and with a nice blowout from the cold weather, it kind of prompted us to really hurry along. So we had a good break of weather, and we actually got the entirety finished. So
Can I that was the Barkley Park swing?
Hartkey.
Which?
Hartkey.
Hartkey. Thank you. I couldn't.
There will be along the way probably things that we have pretty close to needing to be taken down. I don't know if Scott also told you, Buena Vista House.
Yeah, we didn't talk about that. Good.
Buena Vista House was red tagged. So part of my assessment of our facilities when we went through was to take a look at some of these facilities. I'm not done looking at our facilities, but definitely we're taking a really hard look, a different set of eyes on things. Buena Vista House, it's still there right now, so if you want to drive by, you can. It's on posts, and underneath the posts are concrete, really small pillars, and between the post and the pillars are shims of all sorts of different things. It's on a hillside, and so that hillside over time is shifting a little bit, but the inside of that building, that side wall, the downhill side wall, everything is cracked through it. The shims are starting to kick out. It's very easy to see. The hardwood floors are no longer hard. They're moldy and soft. So there's a number of things really detrimentally wrong with the building. For just general safety purposes, we had the building official take a look at it, and it was deemed unsafe. So that one has been closed. We were making a little bit of revenue off of that as a rental, but not massive. It is kind of a older, cute building, but definitely not worth risking people's lives.
Is there a long-term plan for that?
The short-term plan is we're gaining quotes for demo and or salvage demo. They range from, I think we were looking at $16 or $17,000 down to $6,000. Not quite apples and oranges yet, but we're trying to kind of meet that through, because an older building, you got to consider lead paint, contaminants, and some other things, and those have to be certified before it can be tested, before it can go to the waste sites. So there is a range. We're looking at that, but we haven't determined exactly what the short term or the long term is.
As
Two
far as
choices, right? Either fix or take it down.
yeah, and as far as the, you know, if we do end up taking it down, which seems to be the likely course that we're headed, we don't really have a plan to replace the building, if that's what you're saying. I mean, it's a
Just curious.
relatively minimally used facility for, you know, we don't really program it much for classes or anything. It's just kind of rented. It's sort of an old clubhouse type of a building. By the way, if you're not familiar with that, that's the one that is at Atkinson Park up above it.
1601 Jackson.
Would that be a possible location for another high school construction project at a later
I
date?
actually, in conversation with them about future forecasting beyond their school year windows, they're looking at grants when they start looking at projects. I'm looking at helping them get to a project point of view where we look in terms of 4-year increments, because that helps us on the budgeting side. It also helps us on the planning side for things like minor site plan reviews, technical reviews, that they have all of those done prior to when they need to be building. So we're kind of trying to get a little more streamlined with that, and that is a park itself. If you've been in Atkinson anytime recently, the shelter's kind of iffy. The playground's pretty bad. And then Buena Vista and the restrooms are, and it's probably one of our oldest, probably worst deferred maintenance type parks. So that could be our poster child to look at as far as gaining grants to do some bigger projects, much like the Wesley Lynn look, feel, maybe a little smaller scale, smaller park. But that's definitely a site that we're in discussions about looking at grants and potential for that.
Was that the park, there was a volunteer committee that was taking care of the weeds in the park so that it was not sprayed?
Yes.
It was that one, and also is the Tots Park, are those volunteer groups still active, do you know?
The Atkinson one is not. Richard Bloom taught, the Optimists have kind of adopted that, and they actually were out there, not necessarily coordinated with us, but they went out there and they were doing a cleanup, and it was the same day we were doing a planned cleanup of the park, and so we collaborated just off the cuff, and they got a lot done. So yeah, that one is still active.
Thank you.
Hmm?
That's all of our staff reports.
Okay. Anything else?
I just, on the elevator lighting, which I was also there for, is there grant funding, part of that people can make videos and submit them so that you can have your video up there on the elevator? It seemed like somebody mentioned something about that, because I heard it was part of the funding. They have to allow for local artists to make videos, or I might have misinterpreted what I was hearing.
I heard something like that too, but I'm not sure. I'm not the
Okay, I'll do some
best
research
source of
onto
info.
that.
I would say talk to our Main Street organization about that. They're the ones that are kind of coordinating it for now.
Main Street, Oregon City.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay, there's nothing else. Our next meeting will be February 28th, and we will have an early start of one degree or another for interviews and/or a work session on our goals. And thank you all for being here, and we'll adjourn the meeting at 8:50.